I'm Christine Tully. I'm a senior writing coach at Defend and Publish, and this is episode 5 on part of our February series on joyful academic writing. Episode 5 is all about making your writing an event. So one of the things I started thinking about when I tried to imagine how academic writing could be thought of as joyful and fun in the way that I like to think of the way that I do it, where I get a sense of satisfaction, I enjoy doing it. Yes, I'm working under the same pressures as many academics to publish and meet deadlines and things like that, but I do enjoy the process. And I try to think about what are 4 things that I do that help that to happen. One of these is making writing an event. So one of the interviews that I've done about my writing process was with a podcast called Rhetoricity. We'll link to it in the show notes. And I talk about how I treat my writing sessions as a hot date. So, maybe a nerdy hot date, but a hot date nonetheless. And what I do is I talked about going to the library, I know in my podcast, the previous podcast episodes, but the other part of it is a little bit about the buildup. So for example, I make sure that I get one of those really fancy $5 cup of coffees, and I do that, pick that up on the way to the library. I can only have that fancy coffee unless I'm going to the library to go to a writing session. So that's something to look forward to. Another thing that I do to make it an event is that I always play certain music when I'm on my way to go to the library. And so I've actually had some discussions about this on Twitter, and I think of this as pre-gaming for my writing. And, maybe, if you were a college student back in the day, you might have, done some pre-gaming before you went to a football game or to, some other event. And, I think about it in that way where I'm getting my nice coffee, I'm playing some good music to get me in that writing mode to get into the library. And, that those 2 things together already put me in the right frame of mind when I'm driving to work. So I'm not thinking about, oh, well, I'm going to panic about not getting my, some parts of my writing done. I'm thinking about it as I'm on my way to my writing session. What can I do to ritualize that, but also make it pleasurable? So, good coffee, good music. And then third, I also go to the library, and that's something that I've been able to do post-pandemic to get back in there because my campus has opened back up again. And so part of it, I think right now, is that I'm very relieved and grateful that I'm able to write in the library again after 9 months of not being able to. But the other part about that is I am going somewhere. I write in the library a lot. So everybody in our library, a little shout out to the University of Findlay, but everybody in our library, because I come in there all the time to do these writing sessions, they know what I'm doing. So I say hello to the same people. I go up to the same second floor and I look around for a good spot to write. Sometimes it's a big table. Sometimes it's by a window or in a study carrel. So I can have a little bit of variety up there. But that's part of making an event. It is a ritual, but I try to do these very pleasurable things to make it more interesting for me to click into, as I like to describe it, when I get started to write. And thinking of writing as an event, there's so many other things that you can do to celebrate it. You can use really nice pens. You can reward yourself with, some great screensaver. You can use some fun technology tools. Technology tools is something I'll talk about later this month, but you can find tools that make this more pleasurable. For example, I know somebody that just started using Trello boards as a way to keep track of a writing project, and they really like it because they can color code the boards, and there's kind of the fun of playing around with that. And so they work on that Trello board as the closing of a writing session. So they basically use the fun playing with Trello as the way to make writing an event where they close it out. Another way you might think about making your writing joyful is to think about your writing place and see if there's something that you can do to make it a little bit more pleasurable. One interesting idea I just heard about on another podcast was thinking about standing up when you're doing some creative work. And the argument was that in the age of Zoom, we're all sitting down, and that's going to make you not as productive as you possibly could be. So I do think there's something to this. And I know that I do have one of those little tabletop standing desks. So if you just look at one on Amazon, they're pretty cheap. I think I got mine for maybe $15, but basically it looks like a little TV tray that sits on top of your desk, and you can put your laptop on top of that. Another thing you might think about is changing your chair if you're going to actually sit somewhere to do some writing. So certainly in the library, I've been known to do this to find just the right chair at the height that I want. So I'll swap out one for another one, but you might do this in your house as well. So in your writing space, You might be sitting on a kitchen chair out of necessity because that's where you're working, you're in the kitchen, but maybe during your writing session you go and get that chair that you think you might like a little bit better. It's a little bit of a hassle, but again, it's a mental click into your writing, and it gives you something else to look forward to, that you actually can sit in a more comfortable chair to do your writing. I definitely know people that, light a scented candle when they start writing. I had a discussion with a writing group about this, where many of them will get dressed to write like it's an event, not sitting in sweatpants to do it. So there's lots of little tricks and tips. I don't think that there is any right answer for any of these, but just thinking about your writing space and not trying to get the same old space to work this time might be a way to make your writing a little bit more joyful. Maybe another point that would be helpful is to write on a Post-it what your thesis is for your project and have that nearby as part of your writing space. So if you're looking around, especially when I write at home, I look around and see, oh, there's that big pile of, papers that I didn't do anything with. There's a laundry basket I didn't do anything with. Seeing that could maybe bring you back into your writing project and remember what you're doing it for. So hopefully those suggestions are useful in rethinking that writing space and making it a little bit more joyful.